There are many impressive archaeological sites on this planet that evoke a sense of awe and wonder as to how our ancestors were able to build such gigantic buildings thousands of years ago. The pyramids of Giza are possibly the most famous of these ancient buildings, but there are many others around the planet where our ancestors thousands of years ago possessed incredible stone cutting skills and apparently had the ability to move extremely heavy stones. Naturally, of course, since this seems to be an impossible feat for the times, this will of course cause many people to propose quite fantastic sounding theories as to how these sites were constructed, ranging from highly advanced lost civilizations of the Ice Age to giants, even to extraterrestrial beings having visited Earth a long time ago, helping to construct these sites with their superior technology. And a site which has evoked the fascination of humans for many centuries, possibly one, if not the most mysterious and awe-inspiring site on the planet, is the massive gargantuan temple complex at Baalbek, situated in modern-day Lebanon, directly in a city also carrying the same name. So who constructed this fascinating site? Romans? Aliens? Giants? Or Atlanteans? Well, let's see if we can shed some light on the mystery of Baalbek. It is often said that Baalbek is the smoking gun, that there must have been a highly advanced ancient civilization many thousands of years even before the Egyptians built the pyramids, and that this civilization had also built the Baalbek platform. Namely, the various temples of the Baalbek site were built onto a large platform, built out of many stones, and some of these stones, 3 of them to be precise, called the trilithon stones, weigh about 800 metric tons each. In the nearby quarry, about a kilometer away from the site, some other stones have been discovered, weighing even more. One, 1,000 metric tons, and 2 other ones weighing even more, 1,100 and 1,200 metric tons. These stones were left in the quarry and never used, but even so, the sheer massiveness of these stones and the 3 stones that were used in the walls of the platform make many people think that this must be the smoking gun evidence that indeed the Baalbek platform was much older, built by an unusually advanced civilization, and that the Romans just found Baalbek, and that they were so impressed by the magnificence and grandiosity of that ancient site that they decided to build their own temples onto that previously existing platform. I have to say, I personally love that theory, okay? I find it utterly fascinating and amazing because it is exciting and opens up unconventional thinking, and I think unconventional thinking is good, per se. However, just because something is exciting and sounds interesting and makes for a nice story, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. So let's get to the facts and see if Baalbek is really 12,000 years old, built 10,000 years before the Romans had even arrived there. Well, if Baalbek is so insanely old, around the same age as Göbekli Tepe and similar sites, then why hasn't the site been mentioned in old texts? For instance, there is a strange silence on Baalbek in old Assyrian records. During the reign of King Shalmaneser III in the 9th century BC, there was a war between the Assyrians and the northern kingdoms of Syria. In the tribute list after the war, numerous cities and sites are mentioned, but no mention of Baalbek. This strange silence continues into the Babylonian and Persian occupation of that region, suggesting that the location was of minimal importance. The same later when the region then got under control of Alexander the Great and then under the control of the following Diadochi split empires. When the Romans then finally arrived during the time of Pompey the Great, The geographer Strabo described the region as follows. The area was mountainous, with high regions controlled by bands of robbers, and the plains had farming communities. That's it. That's all he wrote. No mention of a giant impressive platform or impressive structures of any sort. If such an incredible sight would have existed before the Romans, then the silence on the part of Strabo is absolutely strange, especially considering the impressiveness of these very large stones. But there is more. Archaeological digs found something highly interesting below the massive base stones, which we can see here, which are forming the base of the three massive trilithon stones. The base stones themselves are already very heavy. Now below these base stones, a drum of a pillar was found, matching in size the pillars of the temple of Jupiter, which was built on top. Therefore, it was likely a leftover or no longer useful piece of one of the columns of the temple of Jupiter. But more, there is also a drawing on top of one of the trilithon stones of the plans of the temple of Jupiter, and this plan was built over when it was no longer needed. So taking all these things together, it indeed seems as if, yes, the platform was indeed contemporary with the temple of Jupiter itself. The temple of Jupiter itself was the largest of the several temples built at the temple complex. It is often wrongly said that this is the largest and most massive temple that the Romans ever built. While yes, it is true that the columns are some of the tallest columns ever constructed in antiquity, but they were probably surpassed by the quite unknown temple of Serapis or Sol Invictus at Rome. I talked about that quite unknown temple in this video here. It had columns that were 20 or possibly even 21 meters tall, and the temple had a larger square footage than the temple of Jupiter. So it is not quite true that the temple of Jupiter at Baalbek was the largest Roman temple ever constructed. But of course, still, it is a very impressive temple, and the columns are 19.9 meters tall and about 2 meters thick, making it surely an impressive feat of engineering, considering that a single drum of a column weighed over a dozen tons, and the massive facade stones on top weighed about 100 metric tons each. A special crane had to be constructed to lift 100 metric tons weighing stones. But the temple of Serapis at Rome also had stones of a similar weight on the top structure, so the Romans were known to be able to lift such crazy heavy pieces of stone. And now to something different. The SPQR Shop. They make amazing rings, amazing pendants, attributes, terracottas, coin replicas. They make a lot of wonderful replicas of Roman items, and it's all 100% handcrafted. Let me tell you, the level of craftsmanship is absolutely incredible. You can even buy the one and only Maiorianus ring, and you can only get it on the SPQR Shop. But there are of course many other rings and amazing items that the SPQR Shop crafts with an incredible attention to detail. And with the code in the description, you will get a 20%, I repeat, a 20% price reduction on every purchase on the SPQR Shop. So don't hesitate and buy something nice for you or someone else as a present who also happens to like Roman history. Thanks for your attention, and back to the video. Now, when was the Temple of Jupiter built? Well, the top drum of a column of the temple has an inscription from the time of the Emperor Nero, indicating that the temple was still built in that time. That means that the platform itself with the massive trilithon stones was built not long before that. However, after the king Herod the Great's time, because the base of an older temple was discovered which had been built before the retaining wall. And that temple was built during the time of Herod the Great. So the platform itself was built anywhere between 5 BC and 60 AD. And now, of course, to the important question: how was it built? Well, the temples itself, I think we don't need to talk too much about the temple of Jupiter and the various other temples built onto the platform, because we know that the Romans were capable of building comparatively large other temples by using massive wooden cranes and an ingenious arrangement of pulleys. But how on earth did the Romans move 800 metric tons weighing stones from a quarry 1 kilometer away? Well, turns out the quarry is lying slightly higher in elevation than the temple complex. So this means a flat surface would have existed between the quarry and the temple. So this is how it would have been done. First, a massive trilithon stone block was carved out, while a space was maintained to the ground where rollers were placed. When the block was fully carved out, it fell directly onto the rollers. It could then just be pulled away once it was fully carved out, being pulled directly to the temple site and placed onto the base blocks that had been previously pulled there beforehand, employing the same technique. And this is how it would have looked in detail. After pulling the stones from the quarry, which, as we said, would have been a flat surface, slightly downhill, the last meters would of course be most difficult, as you would have needed to get rid of the rollers underneath. The stones would have been pulled down from the rollers onto the other stones placed beforehand. Water would have reduced the friction forces. Jean-Pierre Adam estimated already in 1977 that this way, so employing a system of capstans and pulleys, as we can see in this picture, only 144 workers would have been necessary in order to pull a trilithon stone weighing 800 metric tons. It would just have been pulled in place directly from the quarry. After the stones would have been pulled in place, the surrounding soil would have been removed, and thus you would have had your massive temple base with the trilithon stones. So no very advanced technology is necessary, and the Romans were known to have transported other very heavy stones. For instance, in 357 AD, the Emperor Constantius II ordered a 413 metric ton weighing obelisk, a bit more than half the weight of the trilithons, to be transported from Alexandria to Rome via a ship. This 3,600-year-old obelisk still stands today in front of the Lateran Basilica in Rome. So if the Romans were able to transport a stone that weighed half as much as the trilithon stones over a distance of a few thousand kilometers over the ocean, then is it so hard to imagine that they were able to transport stones that weigh twice as much over a distance of only 1 kilometer? Plus, there are other examples of very heavy stones that were moved employing only manpower. The Western Stone in the Western Wall of Jerusalem, for example, weighs a few hundred tons as well, according to different estimates varying from around 300 to even 500 metric tons. And the wall was built in the time of King Herod the Great, so in the 1st century BC. Or take the Thunderstone as an example. It weighed 1,500 metric tons, almost twice as much as the trilithon stones. And it was moved solely with manpower and a system of ropes, pulleys and capstans, and a sled with ball bearings over a distance of several kilometers, and this was done in the year 1770, needing no advanced technology as well. Okay, but now to the big elephant in the room. Why even employ such gigantic stones? What was the point? Why not use smaller stones for the side walls of the temple complex? And what about the several unfinished heavier stones? How do they fit in? Well, the answer as to why is because of soil erosion. Such massive stones were built in order to prevent the soil inside the platform to roll downhill, and thus the temples at some point might have become unstable, sunken into the ground, or even would have started tilting to the side, and at some point the temples would have collapsed. In order to prevent that from happening, placing massive heavy retaining stones seemed like a good idea. Also, they would have been so heavy as to even withstand earthquakes, which we can indeed see impressively today. They did, thus strengthening the base of the temple complex. The other stones that were started to be cut out, the Romans probably realized that they went a bit too far with them and decided to abandon the project. We can see on the side of this wall here that they probably had intended to place one of the other stones there, because the measurements would exactly fit the stone of the pregnant woman that had never been finished. Initially, they most likely wanted to build those massive stones all around the retaining wall, but it seemed that they had reached the limits of what made sense and what was technologically feasible. Now, why would the Romans have even built this over-the-top temple complex there in the first place? It is quite clear that the Romans wanted to make a statement with this impressive site, likely wanting to outdo anything which King Herod the Great had achieved before, in order to show the glory and might of Rome in this relatively new province of Syria. Herod the Great had after all built, as we said before, a wall employing a stone weighing hundreds of metric tons as well. That is of course something the Romans couldn't just let stand. And Syria was in those days a relatively new province, established by Pompey in 64 BC. What better way to demonstrate the power of Rome than to construct something truly massive? And indeed it worked, as this became an extremely important cult site for the following centuries. Many emperors went there, consulting the famed oracle of this city of Heliopolis, as it was also called, since the sun god had been an important Oriental cult associated with a previously existing temple that had stood there from the 1st century BC. Trajan went there twice, consulting the oracle. Septimius Severus was there, and Caracalla as well. For hundreds of years, visitors marveled at this impressive site and marvel of Roman engineering skills. But, as so often happened in the later empire, this site then fell into neglect with the rise of Christianity. The temple of Jupiter had been damaged in an earthquake at some point in the 4th century, and parts of it were then dismantled for building material of a nearby church by none other than Emperor Theodosius himself. But still, even so, around the year 400 AD, Macrobius wrote that Heliopolis, or Baalbek, was one of the great wonders of the world, and describes the golden statue of Jupiter, which was still inside the temple unspoiled. During the reign of Justinian, 8 of the complex's Corinthian columns were disassembled and shipped to Constantinople for incorporation into the Hagia Sophia in the 530s. But Michael the Syrian wrote that even during the reign of Justin II, the golden statue of Jupiter could still be seen in the remains of his temple. When the site was later conquered by the Muslims, it was soon abandoned and fell into ruin in the following centuries. And so, even though I like the theory of a very advanced civilization having built the temple complex of Baalbek thousands of years before the Romans, we have to admit that a lot of the evidence does point towards the Romans having built the site. And the Romans, after all, were capable of building extremely impressive structures and buildings, which is why we are so fascinated by them. If you like this video, please consider supporting us on Patreon or via YouTube membership, because it is your support which makes this channel possible. You would have my utmost gratitude. And I would of course like to thank everybody who is supporting the channel. You people are amazing. And if you want to learn more about the 3 largest temples of Rome, you can watch this video in the upper right corner. But if you want to learn more about the city of Rome after the fall, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias tibiago and bene valete.